Hey, everybody, welcome to the Outlier panel discussion. Thank you for being with us. As always, I'm your host, Gonzalez. This is a little bit of a different panel discussion, a little bit of a different recording that we're doing today because, we usually talk about podcasting, those that we're highlighting those that are podcasters. We have these virtual events, these in-person events. But today we kind of want to talk a little bit about how we can use our platforms for good, especially nowadays. There's so many protests and riots and just COVID that we just kind of still dealing with. So much going on that I was thinking, I have a lot of episodes that I'm supposed to be promoting this week, but it feels weird to be able to do so. So we stopped kind of promoting those shows, and I wanted to kind of get into something a little bit deeper, a little bit more in the moment. I know most of the panelists that are on here, we had talked about coming on here to talk about Joe Rogan and the Spotify deal and the future of podcasting, but it felt so trivial, right? It felt so weird to be able to have that discussion here at this time, and so we decided to change the subject. And so now we're talking about how to use our platforms for good in a world right now that seems to be all over the place, right? There's some good, there's some bad, but a lot of people are hurting, and so we want to see what we can come up with as far as how to use our platforms to help our fellow men. And so I have an amazing panel, one of the best we've had in a long time as far as diversity and ideas and just shows in general. I want to introduce them real quick. Laura Cathcart Robbins, she is from The Only One in the Room. Jordan Gass-Poore, local Switchboard NYC. Harry Duran, Fullcast. Jay Connor, Extraordinary Negros. Guys, let's take 35, 45 seconds and introduce yourselves to our audience. So Laura, let's start with you.
Thank you, Ever. I'm Laura Cathcart Robbins. As you said, I am the host and creator of the podcast, The Only One in the Room, which is a podcast based around my experience of being the only Black person at a 600-person event 2 years ago, which resulted in a viral HuffPo article that resulted in this podcast. And I'm also a freelance writer. I live in Studio City, California with my co-host, producer, and boyfriend, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun.
Nice. Jordan, let's go with you.
Hi, I'm Jordan Gass-Poore. I'm a New York City-based freelance podcast producer and journalist. I co-founded a women-led audio collective called Local Switchboard NYC. And thanks, Ever, for having me on.
Thank you for being on. Harry.
Hey, thanks, Ever. I'm Harry Duran, host of Podcast Junkies, founder of Fullcast, born in El Salvador, lived in New York and Los Angeles and Atlanta, and now of all places call Minneapolis home. So it's been an interesting week, to say the least.
Welcome. Jay.
What's going on, y'all? My name is Jay Connor, host of Extraordinary Negros. Also staff writer at The Root, contributor all over the place. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, let's kind of jump right into this. What is the feeling of where you're at now? What's the vibe in your cities? I know, Harry, Minneapolis, we'll start with you here in just a sec, but I know, again, we're scattered across the U.S., New York, L.A., Minneapolis. Let's talk about what the vibe right now and what's going on right outside your door. Harry.
Literally outside my door on Thursday night, there was looting, so we had to leave town. And then we came back, my girlfriend and I came back. Thankfully, we had someplace to go, and we're in the uptown part of it, Minneapolis. But there's been obviously marches nonstop. We marched on Sunday to the site of George Floyd's death, and which felt good, and is a lot of tension, as you might imagine, in every major American city right now. But I think people are disregarding the curfew because they have a need to protest peacefully, which I'm in support of. And just tensions are high. Personally, I feel I've been going to sleep like late, either because I'm on Twitter all the time or because I'm trying to figure out what's going on in the city. And then you've got outside agitators coming in as well. There's neighborhood watch groups posting about just random cars with out-of-state license plates looking to stir up trouble. So there's a lot of mix of energies going on right now. And what I'm feeling actually is what my girlfriend called adrenal fatigue at this point, just because it feels like we're on edge for an extended period of time.
Sure. Thanks. Laura, let's go with you.
So yeah, here I live in this nice little hamlet of Los Angeles called Studio City, where right outside my door there are kids playing in the street and no sign of anything like what I just saw in Hollywood coming back from my doctor's appointment, where everything was boarded up, streets were littered with debris, and every street was blocked by these huge dumpsters. I don't know if you've seen those, Jay, because you're kind of like right in the middle of it, right? But yeah, there's these huge dumpsters just blocking the streets with police, like security around the dumpster so you don't bypass them. And so I couldn't navigate my way back. I got over fine, but all those things, all these barriers went up just while I was there. There's a 1 o'clock curfew in Beverly Hills right now. A 1 o'clock curfew in Santa Monica. I know that for the county of Los Angeles, I got an alert saying that it was 9 o'clock, but each city has the right to create their own curfew. So that's what it's like here. And just like as far as the vibe of the people that are in my life, I've never experienced anything like this. It is like there is no conversations, and the conversations, the few conversations that we're able to have, everybody's so depleted and so low. Like I said, it's so intense. I was here in the 92 for the 92 civil unrest, and it wasn't like this then. And I know this is on, COVID quarantine, and then Breonna Taylor, and then Ahmaud Arbery, and then George Floyd, and what's his name? Cooper.
Christian Cooper.
Christian Cooper, thank you.
Yeah,
so I know it was that pile on, but it's unlike anything I've ever experienced.
Thank you. Jay, I know you're close.
Yeah. I mean, people are just mad, dude. People are just fed up. You know what I'm saying? Especially Black and brown people, especially Black folks. If anything, I think that this sets a precedent moving forward that, as a country, we're not going to stand for this type of behavior. I never in my life thought that I'd ever see uprisings throughout all 50 states as a byproduct of racial injustice. So to me, it was kind of refreshing, but it was also kind of infuriating that it took the life of George Floyd for this to even happen in the first place. So I think there's a lot of tension. I think there's a lot of anger directed towards police, directed towards, upholders of white supremacy, directed towards our president. And I think that a lot of people are looking for answers, and hopefully, the state of Minneapolis, the city of Minneapolis provides us some answers here shortly, because I believe they're about to announce if they're going to release additional charges.
I think they just did, like literally last 20, 25 minutes or so. But we can definitely check that out. Thanks. Jordan.
Yeah, I think similar to Laura. So I live in Long Island City in Queens, and it is a nice community that you see children outside over the weekend. I haven't experienced personally any protests. I think people in my community are trying to stay outside, period. So when I go walk around the block, like before everything happened, that people still were not outside. I mean, you can hear helicopters now. We had an 11 p.m. curfew. Now it's 8 p.m. Until Sunday. But yeah, I think that my community here at least is just trying to stay indoors and has been trying to stay indoors because of COVID. But even like the coffee shop downstairs, talking to folks there, I think that there's just not the same kind of conversations that some of my friends that are living in Brooklyn are having with their community, that Long Island City is not having those similar conversations. And I think that we should, but that's a whole other thing that we can get to.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny. I'm originally from Long Beach, California, and there's been a lot of protesting there, and some peaceful protesting as well. Some amazing pictures of literally down the street from where I lived for a while. But now I'm in southern Utah, in St. George, and it's, I kind of feel it's a weird place to be, just because with COVID, it didn't affect us much. My day-to-day didn't affect us. The protest and everything else physically hasn't affected us. There's been some protesting, but very little downtown here. It's a small town, maybe 100,000 people. But again, it hasn't affected me from being able to go to the store or on bike rides with my kids or things like that. But it feels heavy. Everything feels heavy right now. With everything that we're seeing in the news, with people that we follow on social media, and just everything that's going on, it doesn't feel like anything else in the past. And I think, Jay, was you that said that it just kind of has a different feel to it. Everybody seems to be in on this now. Again, whether you agree with how they're doing it or what they're doing, but everybody wants something a little bit different. And so as podcasters, we are in and writers and those that have platforms, we are in a unique position right now because we're kind of, media companies, right? We're putting out content. And like I said at the top of the hour, do we focus on this or do we ignore it and go about our daily business? I know with Outlier, our community and those that follow us, they follow me and they come to my events because we are kind of putting stuff out there, how to start a podcast, how to grow a podcast. We bring out these amazing, talented podcasters and kind of present them to our community. They're not necessarily coming to me or to the Outlier events because of my political stance or my social stance on a lot of different things. They come to me for a specific reason. And so, but I do have an audience and so do you. What do we do? Do we stay quiet and go business as usual, or do we kind of jump all in and try to change it? Again, necessarily, they're not coming to me for the news. They're not coming to me for political updates or anything like that. So how do you feel about it as you guys have your own platforms as well? Some of us larger than others, but we do have people that are in our communities. What are we supposed to do right now? Anybody can jump in.
I think it depends on what your platform is. I think that, like, as a writer, a lot of people, I'm very fortunate to be able to, write in front of millions of people every single day. So I think as a writer, a lot of people look for me to kind of like process and kind of explain certain things and inform communities. But I think that as a podcaster, a lot of people look at us to do the same thing. So, I think it kind of plays into, what that platform is. But I think at the same time, as far as resolving these issues and going about these things, it's kind of like I tell people all the time, like, people of color and specifically Black folks, like, we can't be project managers. You know what I'm saying? Like, our job is to be consultants in regards to matters of race. We need to follow the lead of, of what the dominant class is going to do in regards to the situation, because this isn't a problem that we created. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's always, the onus is always falling on us to rectify the situation, but we're too busy auditioning for our humanity and we're fed up. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a matter of kind of informing people as far as how I go about it. I'm sorry, I'm still kind of out of it right now.
Yeah, no worries. That was great. Harry, what do you think?
No, I'm going to echo
Yeah.
what Jay's saying. Right now, everyone that I've connected with or talked to in Black communities, that, they're exhausted. They've been holding, fighting this fight for lifetimes, and they need help. Every single, Black ally needs the help of folks, white folks, non-Black folks, and just everyone to just help, because I think if you do have a platform, whether it's with 5 people or 5 million people, just say something. I'm just a firm believer that you can't just stay silent anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm educating myself. I'm reading how to be an anti-racist. It's just like I'm complicit in all the things that I've done where I've either turned the other cheek or have not paid attention, and reminding everyone that I can that's in my circle to do more. Whatever it is. But a friend of mine, Rachel Rogers, said, if you're not uncomfortable, then you're not doing enough.
I like that. Laura, you were going to say something?
I was going to say auditioning for our humanity is just brilliant. And I love that. Thank you for that. So yeah, we had an amazing interview teed up for this week with Misha Youssef, who I met through Jay Connor, and just love her. Yeah, she's the bomb. And Misha and I had a conversation the night before we were supposed to release it about whether or not it was appropriate. It felt tone deaf to release an episode, even though her, everyone who comes on is the only one who blank, that's their title. And she was the only one who refuses to be tokenized. So we thought that her episode might be in alignment with what was going on, but we had recorded it before, and it didn't really speak to what was going on this week or last week. So we pushed it. We're going to release it either next week, depending on what the climate is, or maybe the week following. And this week, I actually, on Tuesday, we went on, Scott and I, and we just like 10 minutes of, we're not going to release anything, but listen to Jay Connor's episode. Because there's a lot of education in there. You should listen to it, Jay. But it's literally 10 minutes. And we said, we don't feel comfortable releasing. And then we went in and recorded with this African-American playwright historian. He's an African-American historian about African-American studies. He's also African-American, and he's a playwright. And then another woman who is mixed race, black, white and black, with African-American sons, who wrote this beautiful post that's been shared hundreds of times about how white people can educate themselves now. So we did a hybrid episode where we interviewed two guests for the first time, interviewed him, interviewed her, and we're going to release it tomorrow. And it's a departure from our format. It's an absolute departure from what we normally do, but in a way it's not, because the podcast is the only one in the room.
Sure.
And so it's still in alignment with our message and our brand. And I feel it to be very considerate of where we are right now. I don't know how we'll go about promoting it, or if we'll promote it at all, but we're going to release it on Thursday, tomorrow.
Jordan, what do you think?
I mean, I've been preaching the gospel of collaboration ever since I started being a journalist and in this industry, and I've had already uncomfortable conversations just around gender, for instance, about collaboration and how you serve communities and the role of journalists in a community. And these conversations have been brought back. And some of the folks that I work with in podcasting and in writing have still pushed back on the idea of collaboration and how you cover communities that you're supposed to be serving. So like these conversations are still really sticky, and I'm just trying to chip away at some of the nonsense, to be honest, that I've heard from some of my team members. So yeah, that's where I'm at with my team calls every day with some of these outlets that I'm not going to name, and I really do want to name.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so that's my side of things.
So it sounds like for the, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I said get messy. I want to hear names. I mean, I think it's important to, I think it's important to hold people accountable. I mean, like, I'm literally in the business of doing that. I mean, every single day I have somebody that's, texting me or DMing me about something that I said. And it's just, I think it's important to hold people accountable. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be inflammatory, but I mean, part of the reason we're in the situation we're in now is because police haven't been held accountable.
I mean, I will say that everyone from Bloomberg to the New York Times to what other outlet have I had a conversation with? This Wall Street Journal that I've had conversations with before. Members of my own team at the audio collective I co-founded at local Switchboard have had these conversations. Numerous people at the New York Times have had conversations before. And I will be frank that every person I was having these conversations with is white. So everyone, every conversation I've had, it is someone who is white that I'm talking to about collaboration and having pushback. So
it sounds like, for the most part, it sounds like actually all of us here on the panel, we should at least acknowledge what's going on, right? In the world today, especially now. Again, it feels different than it has in the past. And I think that's a good thing, right? Again, the things that are happening, we don't always agree with everything that's how it's happening, why it's happening for the most part. I think we are in a position where we can kind of push this forward. And, I think we all have to figure out our lane a little bit. We all want the the same thing. We just have to figure out our lane. And feel free to jump in if you have thoughts on those or if you disagree. But, we have about 30 minutes or so left. Let's get right into the meat of this. The whole reason I wanted to do this was I wanted to figure out ways that we can use our platform for good. And some of these things have already started to come out in this conversation. Having these conversations, sometimes hard conversations with everybody in our groups, in our communities, sometimes family members, right? And so having these hard conversations, but what are the things can we do to use our platform, again, whether it's 5 people or 5 million people, to kind of help influence for the better? I know a lot of you guys are already doing a lot of this, but let's talk about it specifically.
I think you should be uncomfortable. You should do what you can and continue to realize that you may not say the right thing, and you may screw up, and you may offend. You're going to offend somebody. Yeah. So you can't tiptoe around this topic. You have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to take a stand, and you have to be willing to alienate people, maybe even lose half your listenership. You have to be willing to do that. If you're doing anything out of fear of retribution, if you're not doing anything because you're afraid of what someone might say, that there's your answer. I think it's incumbent on I'm not going to speak for anyone, but on me to just continuously put myself outside of my comfort zone and remind people that Blackout Tuesday was one day. There's a lot of discussions happening in the coaching community about white coaches and how do they support and how they take money from black clients, but yet they don't speak up to support them, and it's getting crazy because some of the threads I'm following is just there's a whole conference that just got totally blasted. I think FinCon, because of how they conversations behind the scenes about how they treat women or anything like that. So, every single organization, every single conference, I've had conversations about this before. I go to a conference and I'm staring at the stage because I don't see the percentage representation of people that I know that exists in this country, and it's just and I've always struggled to figure out what to do about it. But everyone right now, I think, who has a platform, who has an event, should be, needs to be made aware and be called out on it, because I think it needs a lot of fixing.
Love it.
I think with me, I'm more concerned about action than words. You know what I mean? I'm not with, police out here, kneeling and all this other bullshit I'm seeing on social media where police are kneeling and I don't want to see that. I don't want to hear people say Black Lives Matter when you don't hire Black employees, when your executive board has nothing but white folks on it. I'm not trying to hear that shit. You know what I'm saying? So I think what we really need right now is action. We really need, white folks to be accountable for, what's taking place in this country. We really need everybody to kind of get in unison and really just be honest with ourselves as far as what we can do to resolve this issue, as far as what we can do to be a part of the solution, as far as what we can do to be on the right side of history. Because I feel as they always say, silence is consent. You know what I'm saying? If you have nothing to say on the matter, then you're part of the problem. Because, if Laura's over there getting, whooped on by some random robber or something like that, and I just stand there and watch, you know what I mean? Instead of jumping in, you know what I mean? I'm just as culpable as far as what happened. So I really want to see people step up and take action. One of the people that I commend is a good friend of mine, Janine Wright, over at Simplecast. She texted me, I think it was either today or yesterday. And Ariel hit me up too, but Janine hit me up and she was just like, yo, if you know anybody that needs a lawyer, let me know. I'll connect them if I can't advise them myself. It's just every little bit helps. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people are so worried about, losing followers, losing money, losing deals. And it's we're losing lives. I can give a fuck about, how much money is at stake and all this other stuff when, people talking about looting and stuff like that. Black lives have been getting looted for the last 400 years. Yes. You know what I mean? It's time for action.
Love it.
Yes.
Laura?
Thank you, Harry and Jay, for what you said. And I agree with both of you completely. I was also thinking, I created, I sit on the board of this independent school here, and I created a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee there. And 2 years ago, we tasked all the departments in the school with coming back to us and explaining to us how they were going to, how our committee, how they could see their work through the lens of our committee. And the math department came back kind of like, what are we supposed to do? It's math. Like, we don't. And we're like, yeah, it's math. You have to figure out how to, so every single department could create their curriculum through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion and come back to us. And I feel like it's the same with podcasting right now. I feel like no matter what the subject is, you can figure out how to incorporate this into your message right now.
I like that.
And spin, or, you know, like I said, incorporate what's going on, you know, so that it's not like it's another issue. This is the only time, like Jay said, in the entire history of the world. I mean, Scott and I have been on BBC World Radio 3 times because they're protesting in London, and they're so excited about what's happening here. 3 times in the last 2 days. We just got another request from them. It's really funny. But this is the only time where the world is paying as much attention. Like, it's not before in America, it's like, it was white people and then everybody else. And right now, for this one instant, it's black people and then everybody else. Like, we are the focal point, and to use this to our advantage, which feels odd to say because we don't normally have one, I think is incumbent upon everybody to ride this out as long as we can and push this message that this is, like Jay said, it's people's lives, it's people's livelihoods, but it's also the reason it's come to this peak is because it's years and years and years and hundreds of years of slavery, privatized prisons, voting suppression, Jim Crow, the war on drugs in the 70s, like all these things. This is not just about George Floyd, and that was the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's about all of those things combined that we've been experiencing, and now finally other people are getting a glimpse. You know, so all of that I feel could be weaved into anybody's platform right now and talked about.
Well, I think to that point, though, another thing we have to keep in mind is that, like, our audience wants to hear from us. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all have listeners, and these people, they tune in every week or month or however often you produce an episode. And these people want to hear what it is that you have to say. If anything, that's the best audience that you should be speaking to, because they're going to be the most receptive to what it is that you have to say. And they're going to have way more grace if you mess up. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, if anything, this is the audience you should be speaking to, because you never know how influential you'll be. You never know who's listening. You never know who's watching. So it's definitely important that you definitely make sure you resonate with that audience.
Mm-hmm.
Jay, let me jump back to something you said a little bit earlier, where you were talking about, we need these companies to hire blacks, minorities. We need them in the boardroom. We need them in leadership positions in communities and cities and states. In California, they have affirmative action, right? Being Hispanic, being born in Mexico, right? Growing up in Southern California, I always felt that there was something off about affirmative action, right? I don't want to be the token Mexican in that group. I want to earn it. And maybe I know that a lot of my friends and a lot of people love it and whatever. I don't care which side you're on, but how do we go about that, though? Are we championing affirmative action and just being in that room because of the color of our skin, or because we earned it? How do you feel about this?
Well, I mean, let's be very clear that in America, meritocracy doesn't exist. We're always told that, like, the best person should get it. That shit never happens. Almost always, it's going to be a white male that's going to get whatever the hell it is. That's, you know what I mean? What is it? The big piece of chicken, like they say in people's families. Almost always, it's going to be a white male that gets it. So meritocracy doesn't exist. But I mean, also, like, when you look at things like programs like affirmative action, historically, they've always primarily benefited white women. So, I mean, I think that it's also important that while we have these things, you know, these programs and stuff like that, I'm going to use anything I can to get in the room. I mean, it might not be something that I would wish that, you know, meritocracy exists. I would wish that, you know, I would be able to get in the room based solely on my merit and, you know, my resume and stuff like that. But that doesn't exist. So, I mean, I think that it's important to get in a room by any means necessary and, you know, create opportunities for people behind you. I mean, I think that that's one of the reasons that I kind of slowed down on recording so much and spending more time and kind of being like more of like a podcast activist, because there was a lot of hurdles that a lot of challenges and stuff that I faced whenever I first came into space. And I was like, once I get into a position to where like I have a certain level of cachet and prestige, like I want to help other people. And that's why I started doing Extraordinary Evening, where, you know, you get hundreds of, you know, Black and brown folks in the room and, you know, other minorities and things that nature. And you put them around, you know, people that are power players. You provide them with information. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I definitely think that you should take advantage of anything you can get, because the level field, the playing field is not level. You know what I'm saying? We're playing a game where you know, where white folks are up. We're playing to 100 and white folks are up by like 60 before we even do tip off. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just not fair. It's not even. So it's like, you got to do whatever you can to get that 60 points off and balance the scales.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess just being a you know, proud Mexican man, I'm like, screw that. If I don't earn it, I don't want it. But that definitely makes sense, especially as you're trailblazing, right? And then you're looking back and you're uplifting others. I love that. Thank you. Laura, thoughts? Or Jordan, thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think to just trying to get a mixture of voices in writing from news articles, besides just podcasting, but it's just been a struggle even trying to find, like for COVID coverage, for instance, like trying to find academics or trying to find scientists that are not just white men has been a struggle. Like just being able to have more voices in the mix in whatever platform that you have is really important.
Laura, thoughts?
I mean, I don't know. I think that it's this thing about, I mean, I was really struck by what you said about doing COVID pieces and looking for Black scientists and doctors. And, you know, I was thinking about how many of us in different professions have you know, organizations or cohorts where we can gather and be found just for that purpose. Because there are so few of us in almost any given space, you know, that is not custodial, or, you know, there are lots of spaces where you can find lots of us, but those aren't as plenty. And I was just thinking, I kind of got stuck there because I was just thinking how sad that was. And, you know, my dad is an HIV doctor who has been very vocal about COVID-19, and he's also a vegan. He's 80 years old. He sees patients every day. He's awesome. Nice. But he's actually had people coming to talk to him for the first time because they've been looking for people of color to speak on this. And he's Black and, you know, went to Meharry in Nashville. But yeah, that's what I was reflecting on while you were talking and just thinking about that. But as far as this whole thing goes, you know, I'm just really glad we're having this conversation because, you know, Scott and I looked at each other, and, you know, Scott's white, my boyfriend's white. So we have two different points of view about things like this. Normally we come to a meeting place usually, but we looked at each other and we just didn't know how to approach this, what we should be doing now. And Jay, I should have checked with you. I didn't even get that far. But our next step was going to be to start checking with other people to see what they were doing. And then, you know, Misha and I got on the phone and we came to that conclusion. But I'm just glad that this will be out there for anybody else who's grappling with that, you know?
Yeah. So for those of us that are struggling right in our community as podcasters, what's the first simple step to address this issue?
I think education on how to fix some of this there's not one answer, but obviously getting elected officials voted in that actually give a shit and see this as the number one priority to fix. I mean, and that has to be grassroots, and that has to be people educating themselves, like checking in that your family and friends are registered, asking them specifically, like, let's be clear who you're voting for. And then, this all has to happen at the, some of it has to happen at the community level and getting the right people into office. And I mean, I got to do a lot to educate myself here in Minneapolis, making sure that I'm voting for every single person leading up to November that's committed to changing it.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say really quickly that I just learned recently that the most impactful elections are our local elections on people of color. Rarely are they at the federal level. And those are the elections that most of us do vote in. But the local elections are just so important because it's housing, it's utilities, it's like grocery stores, it's all these decisions, to eradicate food deserts. We need our local authorities. So that was it. Go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's all good. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that education is definitely one of the best things you can do. I think people hear certain buzzwords and they get intimidated and scared. Like when people hear defund the police, they're like, oh shit, are we going to have like anarchy?
Yeah.
No, that just means that resources and those monies that's typically poured into police should be poured into other stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's saying you're putting way too much money, especially in LA. I think 54% of our budget goes into police. What the hell? That doesn't even make sense. So, I mean, we're saying that there's far more important things that money could be going into. And these are things that we need to be paying more attention to. So I definitely think education is key as far as understanding, how legislation works, how Congress works, how Senate works, finding out who, your local representatives are, finding out what kind of power you really do have as far as getting involved in schools. And instead of just stop being so damn lazy. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of times we just get so complacent. And we feel like as long as I vote for the president, we're straight. It's like, no, like there's so much more that you can get active and involved. And I think also we need to stop taking so much leadership. We need to, remove ourselves from celebrity worship. We need to stop looking at these public figures and allowing them to dictate what it is that we need to be doing with ourselves. Because I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but these people have been showing their asses ever since this whole thing showed up. A lot of our favorites have proven themselves to be extraordinarily problematic. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I mean, I think people just really need to have a certain level of accountability to themselves and what it is that they can do individually to spread awareness and help other people out. Even, as Black folks. I mean, I know that like through my podcast, trying to bring it back full circle, through my podcast, I always make it a point to bring on Black women. So, I mean, I think that, we need to have, more divergent opinions and things of that nature and really kind of amplify our messages and really just focus on what's important and key.
As we start to wrap up here in about 10 minutes or so, one of the things that I've always done, if there's something that I want to do and isn't out there, I just create it. Right. And so like some of these podcast events that we've had, they're great. And I attend a bunch of them and I'm part of them. But it wasn't quite fitting with exactly what I wanted to experience. So I just kind of build it. And so we have the Outlier Podcast Festivals. I'd like to think that, we're fast and loose and a good community of very different voices. And just kind of like with this panel discussion, I do it all for me. It benefits me, right? It's awesome that people are listening, but I love getting smart people together to talk about things that are sometimes uncomfortable or sometimes are going to push me. And this is exactly one of those reasons that I do this. With that being said, for a long time and for as long as I can remember, with everything that I do, not just in podcasting, but in my previous career, I didn't want to be known as a successful Mexican podcaster. I just wanted to be known as a podcaster. Right. I don't want to be known as the great Mexican or Hispanic business leader. And so I would turn down, the Latin Chamber of Commerce invites to come speak or lead or all those things. But having this discussion, it kind of feels like maybe I should focus on that because with my events, everybody, let's go. I don't care who you are, what you are. Let's all kind of go there. But maybe I should focus a little bit on Hispanic issues, and if you're black issues or whatever it is, but still have that inviting environment. That's one of the feelings that I'm getting from this discussion. And for a long time, I'd kind of been pushing back on it.
Well, how honest are we looking to get right now?
As
Before I
honest
say
as
what it is that I have to
absolutely.
say?
Do it.
Because my thing is this, is that like, if we're going to talk about the podcast digital diaspora as a whole, right? We look at companies like Wondery, right? Wondery is probably like the whitest of the whitest of the whitest podcast companies in the history of ever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm looking at, if we're going to talk about like, you know, racial disparities and things and inequality and stuff like that, I never in my life want to see anybody from Wondery say Black Lives Matter, because it's just like, clearly it doesn't, because when I look at your company, that's not what's going on. When I look at like podcast movement, you know what I'm saying? Plenty of people of color have had issues with what it is that they have going on. I've gone there before and I felt like it was a complete waste of my time, and I haven't been back since. And I know that every year, more and more people are saying the same thing. And you also can't invite people to come and show up and speak and then charge them to make an appearance. That's not the way it works. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, if we letting the chopper spray, let's call a thing a thing. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, I'm looking at, you know, people like Podcast Movement, Wondery. I'm looking at a lot of these big dogs to really show us, because my thing is that like a lot of times whenever we have issues with racial disparity and racial injustice, I have white people say like, well, what can I do? I don't want you to ask me what I can do. I want you to tell me what it is that you're going to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, the onus doesn't fall on me to do that emotional labor. I'm trying to survive. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm preoccupied with other shit. So I would love to see, you know, if we're going to talk about like, these kind of issues, I would love to see what Podcast Movement is going to be doing within this space. I would love to see what Wondery is going to be doing within this space. I know Spotify has been making some steps, because I do some stuff with Spotify, but I would love to see what a lot of these companies that are, you know, the upper class are doing as far as, racial equality, as far as gender equality. I want to see more women. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make sense that everything is just strictly white male. Like, that's ridiculous to me. It's 2020.
Yeah, it's still, podcasting is dominated like most industries by white middle-aged males, which is, unfortunate right now, where we have so many different voices, and we should try to amplify those. Harry, I know you got to run here at the top of the hour, so I'm going to give you the first final thought as we kind of go around the circle here and have final thoughts on any of this, all of this, just anything that's in your head right now.
I don't know. I think everyone needs to just do what they feel called to do, educate themselves. To Jay's point, there's a new initiative floating around on Twitter, 8 Can Wait. It says data proves that these 8 policies can decrease police violence by 72%, ban chokeholds and strangleholds, require de-escalation, require warning before shooting, exhaust all other means before shooting, duty to intervene, ban shooting at moving vehicles, require use of force continuum, and require comprehensive reporting. And I don't even know how many people realize that those policies are in effect now. So just like continue to do the work, continue to like get out of your comfort zone, educate yourself, read, and take the initiative to support and show your support by doing that, and stop asking what you can do.
Nice, thanks. You can jump off whenever you want or stick around, but thanks, Harry. You've been great as always. Loved you speaking up and talking about this specific topic.
Thank you,
Jordan. Let's go with you. Final thought.
Yeah, my final thought is that I want to continue to collaborate, but I also, on Jay's point for calling out publications, and be more, I wouldn't say combative, but to be able to feel more comfortable with calling out publications. So I think there's a lot of fear with journalism, especially how competitive it is, that you call it a publication, you will be on their shit list and you will never be hired from them again. And in a way, it's like, if somebody doesn't want to hire me for calling them out or wants to fire me for that for some reason, then it's not even worth working with. Like, yeah. I want to be more active in calling out publications when I have a problem, or we have those sticky conversations, and be able to be more forceful with that.
I love it. Thank you. Laura, final thought?
So I guess my final thoughts are, I'm still thinking about what Jay said about using all our platforms. And as a writer, I absolutely am writing as much content as I can now. I have another article coming out directed at white women in HuffPost tomorrow. And
Look at that for sure.
Yeah, it is what it is. But it's but HuffPost is actually only taking pieces from writers of color right now for the next 2 weeks, and they're only publishing things around the protest and around what's going on. So I have a little respect for that. And then also just to what you were talking about, Ever, with you know, standing up for who you are and your identity. I think you don't have to exclude anyone if you want to be inclusive. Like, you can still include everybody, and it doesn't have to be an exclusive thing. And I think that fear of excluding people and then having it cost either financially or just, you know, pride or ego or whatever, keeps us from doing a lot of things that we should do. So that's it.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Jay, final thought.
I just think that we need to, you know, as Black folks, as people of color, as whatever else, I think we need to remove ourselves from the fear of the white gaze. I think we need to spend more time finding out what it is that we can do for ourselves, holding ourselves accountable as far as looking out for our best interests and not worry about how it's going to affect us. Understand that I'm operating from a position of privilege because a lot of people can't say the things that I say because I'm gonna be good regardless. You know what I mean? So I mean, there's a lot of people in the podcast industry that can't say a lot of things that I can say because I'm straight. You know what I mean? And I've been saying the same thing from day one. But a lot of these people are new to the space or don't have a certain level of access or a certain level of, you know, they don't have an established reputation. And I think that those of us who are have been successful, we shouldn't hold it against them. We shouldn't, you know, take advantage of that situation. We should all be looking to help everybody out. We should all be looking to uplift each other, whether it's women, whether it's people of color. You know what I mean? There's space for all of us to thrive, and everybody doesn't have to be a white male in order to be kicking ass and cashing out in this industry. Like, it makes me sick that this is really just beginning. I shouldn't say beginning, but it's emulating Hollywood. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like when you look at the power players, when you look at the money being thrown around, like, Laura's not going to get Joe Rogan money ever in life. Even if she did the same numbers, that would never, ever, 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 ever happen. Jordan would never get that kind of money. And there's a reason behind that. And it's like, we need to acknowledge that and make sure that we're doing whatever it is we can to elevate people of color as well as women within this space.
Jay, everybody else, you guys have been fantastic, right? As we just talked about these final thoughts, but just because this panel discussion is ending, obviously we encourage all of you to continue to talk about this, right? Whether it's in your podcast or in your writing or in your social media, let's keep the conversation going. It's one of those things where everybody here on this panel has you know, we have a certain amount of success behind us. And so I think it's up to us to still look back and lift up our brothers and sisters, right, to the same type of success that we have, because that's the only way that it's going to happen, right? Nobody's going to give it to us, but we certainly need a helping hand. And if it's us, let's do it. Why not? Again, Jordan, Harry, Laura, Jay, you guys have been amazing. This is exactly what I wanted out of this panel discussion. We are all fans of everything you guys are doing, and we're going to continue to follow you guys and your success. Those that are listening, connect with these guys. We're going to have their links on social media in the comments section. Again, everybody, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Ever. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you
Ever.
for having me.